Hey everyone, today we're going to be building this LED dice app with Arduino, right? So you need your 9-volt there, an Arduino, and when you push the button, the LEDs light up from the first one to the sixth one, and then go back to the first one, right? That's the animation, and then it lights up X amount of LEDs between 1 and 6 based on the random number the program generates. So if you like this, please subscribe and like the video, and let's get started building the circuit and the code. Thanks. Alright, so today we're building a dice rolling simulator with these 6 LEDs and a push button. And the idea is you push the button, it generates a random number between 1 and 6, and will light up that amount of LEDs. Like if it generates randomly a 3, it'll light up 3 LEDs. If it generates a 5, it'll light up 5 LEDs. So let's build the circuit. We need the push button, and we'll put that on our Arduino. And then we need the resistor, and we're going to put it on this side of the push button. And then we're going to hook the wires up to the Arduino with the push button circuit here. So we need one here. This is going to be the positive side, and it's going to go down to the 5 volts on the Arduino, which is there. Let's zoom in, make sure we got that. Yep, so 5 volts to the positive side of the push button. Let's change the color. Let's make it red. And then it goes in, and when you push the button, it connects the circuit to here, goes through, and then we want this side to connect to ground, right? So let's try and zoom in on it, okay? And we're gonna go here to ground. And let's make that black. All right, and the last thing we need to do for this push button circuit is we got the current flowing through, right? But then we want to read the state of this button, whether it's pushed or push down or not, right? Whether it's low or high. And to do that, we need a third wire going to one of these digital pins here, and that way it can read the state of this button. So this is the circuit, and then we need another one to read the state of the button. So let's add a wire here on the negative side, and we're going to send it to pin 2. And we'll leave that green, that's fine. So this is the pin that's going to read whether the button is pushed down or not. So that's it for our push button circuit. Now we need to add the 6 LEDs and wire those up. So here we go. Let's go with them up here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, and then we need the resistors attached to the negative sides, right? The cathode side, so positive side, negative side. Well, the resistors could go on either side, but I like putting them on the negative side, so we're going to do that. Resistor. Yeah. And these resistors are 220 ohms. The resistor over here is 1,000 ohms. Just a heads up. And one more. All right, and then we need this to all these negative sides to feed into this negative bar down here, and then we're going to feed that into the ground. So let's do that, and then we'll worry about the positive sides. So let's feed into the negatives here, and we'll make these black. Go here, black. Here to here, here to here, and last one. Right, and then we need to feed this strip here into the ground. So here we go. So all these circuits will run through, all the negatives will go to this bar here, this metal bar, and then it'll go into ground. Now we need to hook up the positive sides, right? And each positive side of the pin is going to go to a specific pin on this Arduino. I'm going to try and move this a little bit to line up better with these LEDs. It's not going to be perfect, but it'll work. So this LED, this first one's going to go to pin 13, and then pin 12, 11, 10, 9, and pin 8. Oh, and there's a color option on the LEDs. I did not see that before. So let's change these colors. If you have different colors, use those, right? It brightens it up a little bit. Let's go white, blue, yellow. And I guess that leaves green. Yeah, green. Okay, so now we got an LED of each color. Just makes it a little more fun. And then we'll go from the positive side here of each one. So positive side of the first one is going to go to pin 13. And then positive side of the second one, pin 12. Next one, pin 11. Pin 10. Pin 9. And pin 8. Okay, and let's double check. Make sure we're thinking. And I think that's everything we need to make our dice application. So that's it for the circuit. Stick around for the code. Thanks. All right, so to build the code for this dice app, we need to start by first thinking about our button, right? Our button has a state. It's either pushed down or it's not. And if it's pushed down, we're going to say the state's 1, it's true. And if it's not pushed down, then it's false. The state is 0. So we're going to, at the top, say int button state equals 0. And then underneath, we need to say what pin that button's connected to. And if you look at the circuit we just made, it's connected to pin 2. So we can do int button pin equals 2. All right, now we also need to include our LEDs, right? So each LED is connected to an individual pin. And for our easy purposes, we connected them from 13 to 9 or 13 to 8 in order. So we need to declare those LEDs. So to do that, we can say int LED1 equals 13. And now you can see where this is going, right? Int LED2 equals 12. Int LED3 equals 11. Int LED4 equals 10, int LED5 equals 9, and int LED6 equals 8, right? Because we have our 6 LEDs. Then we want to take all those LEDs and put them inside of an array so we can loop through that array and light up the LEDs. So to do that, we can say int, and so we say int because it's going to be an array of integers, right? So each LED is an integer. Excuse me. So we say int, and then we can say LEDs, and it's an array of the ints. So we say int LEDs brackets equals, and then I'm going to create that array. So LED1, LED2, LED3, LED4, LED5, and LED6. And we're just going to close those curly brackets there. All right, so that's our LED array. Now we're down in the setup. And in the setup, we need to set the pin modes for each LED. So each LED is going to be an output, right? So we're going to create, it's our own function, our own custom kind of function for this. We're not just going to write pin mode for each one inside a setup. We're going to call a function that does that. So set LED pin modes. And we're going to do it just like that. And then underneath this void loop here, so this code's a little more complicated than the stuff we've written so far, and that's okay. It's just the way we're doing this. So we're going to create our own function down here, and it's not going to return anything, but it is going to set these pins. So if it doesn't return anything, we put void set LED pin modes, and then we need to say each LED is an output. So pin mode, we can say LED1 output. And then we need to do this for each LED. So we're going to copy and paste it 5 times. 1, 2, oops, whoa, not like that. 2, 3, 4. Goodness gracious. 4, 5. Okay. So now this is LED1, LED2, LED3. Let's do that. Okay. LED4, LED5, and LED6. So now when we call set LED pin modes, right, when we run the setup function, this LED pin modes runs first, and it sets all the pins to output. So instead of including all this up here, we kind of put it in its own function because it's doing that one thing, right? And then the next thing we're going to want to do excuse me, is set the pin mode of the button. And since it's not an LED, we're just going to set it underneath here and say pin mode. And the button pin, is what we have up here. the button pin is on pin 2, right? But it's an input. So we're listening for that button, whether it's pressed or not. And based on whether it's pressed or not, then we run the actions with the LEDs. So underneath there, we need one more thing, because we're going to need to create a random number during this to specify a random number between 1 and 6 for the dice roll. So we need to first create a random seed from some noise from the outside here from our Arduino. It's gonna create a random number based on some white noise it takes in through one of its pins. So to do that, we can say random seed analog read, and we're going to read from 0. Okay, and then in our loop, right now we're in our loop. So this setup runs before the loop ever runs, right? So that's what we do to set up the kind of the dice rolling thing. And then to loop it, or what we do forever and ever and ever, is we start by reading the state of the button, right? So each time through this loop, we want to read the state of the button, and based on the button state is what we want to do with LEDs. So we can say button state, which we declared up top is 0, right? Equals digital read. And so we're reading the state of the button, whether it's pushed or not, and the button pin from pin 2, right? That's where the button is. Underneath that, we're going to create a boolean for whether the button's pressed or not, right? If the button's pressed, its state is high, it equals high. And if it's not pressed, it equals low. And high is usually associated with 1 and low is 0, right? So we're going to say boolean, because this is a boolean value. It's either pressed or it's not. Button pressed equals button state. And the button state is either equal to high or it's not. If it's equal to high, then the button pressed is true. If it's not, it's false. All right, and now we get our random number for the dice roll, right? It's somewhere between 1 and 6. So now we need to say, hey, we need that number between 1 and 6. So we can say int random num for random number equals random 1, 7. Now I'm using 7 here because it starts with 1 inclusively, and then it goes up to 6, but it doesn't include the 7th. So that's why we need the 7 there. It doesn't feel intuitive, but that's just the way this is. That's the way most of these random functions work in various languages. But anyways, on we go. So random num, we get a random number between 1 and 6. And then we say if the button's pressed, then we want to animate the buttons, so we have that back and forth of the LEDs. Each one lights up in a row, and then each one lights back, and then it rolls the dice, right? So it has an animation, and then it rolls the dice. So if button pressed, then we want to reset the LEDs, right? Because initially will not be lit up, and that's fine. If we reset them, they just won't be lit up still. But if we roll the dice once, right, there's going to be 3 or 4 lit up, and we want to reset those every time before we roll, right? So we need a reset LEDs function, and let's go ahead and create that reset LEDs function. So underneath our loop, we're going to create it down here, and it's void because it's going to just be all, it's not going to return anything, it's all side effects, right? So reset LEDs, excuse me, and we're going to say for int I equals 0 when I is less than 6, I plus plus. And then inside of this for loop, right, inside of this for loop, we need to set each LED to low, because either the LED is lit up, it's on high, or it's low. And if it's already on low, that's fine, it'll just stay low. But if it's lit up, we need to turn the LED off. So we can say, excuse me, digital, right, LEDs I, low. So what this is saying, right, it's saying first I is 0, it's fine. And then we're going to say LED 0, and that's from our array up here, right? So the 0th element is the first LED, and we set that to low. Then we do 1, so LED 1, which is actually LED 2, right? It feels wrong, but it is right. It is correct. Then LED 3 up through LED 5, which is actually the 6th one, and then that resets the LEDs. So we have that function. Excuse me. Now we need to, I'm just going to delay just a little bit before we actually roll it. So it kind of creates a bit of anticipation instead of instantly rolling. So we can say delay, and it's just going to be half a second, 500 milliseconds. Underneath that then, so we reset them, they're off, they're all off, and then we need to run the animation, and then we need to roll. So next is the roll animation. And that of course is going to be its own function, right? We don't want to put everything inside of this one function, it'll get really cumbersome and hard to read. So let's create now our roll animation function. So it's not going to return anything, it just lights up the LEDs, roll animation. And inside of our roll animation, we need to light them up one by one, going up to the top, and then we need to turn them all off, going back down, right? So light up, turn off, light up, turn off, so on and so forth. So to do that, we can say for int, I'm so used to saying let I equals 0 when I is less than 6, I plus plus. And inside of our for loop now, we do digital, digital, right? Again, LEDs, I, this looks kind of familiar, right? High. So the LED is going to turn on. Then we're going to delay for just a split second, or a tenth of a second, actually not a split second, a tenth of a second, so that we can see the LEDs actually on, right? Because if it's instant, it's just going to be really quick and hard to see. And then we're going to immediately write that pin to low. So digital, write, LEDs, I, low. Right, so this is the loop. The first LED, or LED 1, which is in the 0 spot, turns on for 1/10 of a second, and then it turns off. Then the second one turns on, off, right? So they each light up one by one and turn off in sequence up through 6, and then we need to light them up going back down from 6 to 1. So to do that, we need a second for loop, for, not inside, just separately. Int I equals 5. This time we're starting at the top of the loop. And we say when I is greater than or equal to 0, I minus minus. All right, so now we're saying we're going from the top of the loop where we just stopped back down to the bottom. So similar concept, we're actually going to copy, paste. And yeah, we're literally going to copy paste. So now we're starting at the last pin, and we're lighting it up, turning it off. And then the pin before it, which is LED 4, lighting up, turning off, 3, light up, turning off, so on and so forth. So we light them all up going up, and then we light them all up going down, and that's the animation. So, and if you remember, if you're confused to kind of what that looks like, go back to the beginning of the video real quick and just take a look at how that animation plays out, right? So that's the animation. Then we want to delay another just half second for anticipation purposes. So delay 500. And then we want to roll the dice, right? So we can say roll dice. And we need to make this function, and this one's gonna take in an argument. And our argument specifically is going to be the random number, right? Because we want to roll a random number every time. We don't want to roll 3 every time or 2. It's not random, that it's not a dice roll. So roll dice takes in a random number. We need to make this function. So let's do that, and then we are done with our coding. So here we go. It doesn't return anything, right? It's all side effect. Void roll dice, and it takes in the random number. It's an int, random num. And then we say for int I equals 0 when I is less than the random number. Okay, so the random number is somewhere between 1 and 6, we said, right? I plus plus. And we're going to get to what this does in literally just a second. Digital, right? LEDs, I, high. So we're going to turn on however many LEDs, or X amount of LEDs up to the random number. So if the random number is, let's say 1, right? Let's say it's 1. For int I equals 0, right? I is less than 1. So 0 is less than 1, that's fine. So we write the 0th LED, which is the first one, to high. We turn the first one on. Then we come up here. 1 is 1 less than 1. 1 is not less than 1, so this loop's done. All right, it would work the same for 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then at the very end of this, we want to delay just another 100 milliseconds to allow stuff to reset, or that seemed to work for me. So if you want to, cool. If you don't, see if it works without. So this is the full code, right? All right, so that is all the code for our dice app. Hope you enjoyed making this. If you did, please subscribe, like, comment for what you'd like to see built next, and we'll see you soon. Thanks. Take care. Bye.